Welcome to Doug's Open Mic, a podcast spotlighting local musicians, bands, and songwriters.
For Doug's Open Mic, episode number 3. Who knew? So my guest for this week will be Craig Edwards.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, everybody. And so we'll go through the typical stuff going on for the first part of the show, and then we'll have a bunch of Craig stuff. Oh, he's got all sorts of, we got fiddles, we got banjos, we got guitars, we have I don't even know what we want to call that thing.
It's a banjo.
It's a banjo. It doesn't look like a banjo, but
it does look like a banjo.
Well, not to me. Anyways, so first off, I want to mention a couple places. Again, I keep running into places that in my gallivanting around town of places that have live music that I was unaware of. So 2 of them was the Surf Cantina has live music on Friday nights. This Friday they're having Tony Marshall, which I am not familiar with. So it might be a good excuse to go out to Friday night to listen to this guy.
Yeah.
And Thirsty Beaver also has a live music. I think one night a week, maybe a Friday or Saturday. They had I went to eat there, which I was very impressed with, actually. It's like a pub food on steroids. You know, it's like chicken. Yeah, they have chicken wings. Yeah, like 12 different sauces. And you can either have them regular or they put them on the grill after and charbroil them. So that's like 24 choices of chicken wings, like right there. They have pizzas, they have salads, they have a full bar. The waitress was spectacular. I was there with my grandson, and he charmed the bejesus out of her. We got a free dessert because of him. And so one thing I did notice they did have an outdated music schedule on the table, and I think James Harris plays there. Probably, it looks like he's there at least once a month, and he was the only one I recognized. But I will continue to investigate. So, what did I do last week? Well, I had a busy week last week. I mean, this is my job. This is what I got to do. I got to go out and listen to music and drink beer. I mean, that's my deal. So, one thing I did, I saw Craig's show at the United. So let's talk about that a little bit. So Craig doing a once a month show at the United. So give us the deal.
The deal is the show is called the Roots Music Stomp, and the basic format is that I play a number of different styles of music on different instruments. So. All roots music stuff. So it's Appalachian string band music, fiddle and banjo and guitar and mandolin. And I play blues and bluegrass and Cajun music and Celtic music, Irish and Scottish and Quebecois stuff, and some swing and early country music and Zydeco. So kind of cover the alphabet there, if you will. And the format is that once a month on the 4th Sunday of the month for most of the time, although the next one's going to be exception. I'll talk about that a little later. But the 4th Sunday of the month, I'll have a guest artist who plays in one of those styles, and I'll do a short set, and they'll do a short set, and then we'll play some together and talk about the music and where it comes from and who made it and what we do with it. And the first 2 shows have been great. The first one I did sort of a smorgasbord of a sampler of future shows. So I had one of my longest running musical partners, Tom Randall, that I met back in I think 1980, and he did I did one song, he did a short set, but then a really short set, just a few minutes, and then we had a couple that does Cajun music. We had Irish Olin Piper, the elbow pipes, and some sea shanty singers, and finished up with old time music. Oh, and Dan Stevens came and played a blues set too. So that was just kind of give people an idea what was coming up. But then this last one was a local band from Hope Valley, a family band called Pitcher's Garage Band that plays old time string band music and includes their two kids and who are, I don't think either one of the kids is 10 yet, and they get up and perform.
Yeah.
It was
so fun night.
It was a good time, and both of them have been sold out. So get your tickets early. The Roots Music Stomp, 4th Sundays. I'll go ahead and talk a little about the next one though, because it's going to be on Wednesday, December 20th. All of these start at 6:30 p.m. And the guests for this next one are the Vox Hunters, a duo consisting of Armand Araman and Ben Gagliardi. They come from Providence, or they live in Providence, and they're both spectacular musicians, play several instruments, and specialize in Rhode Island music, actually traditional Rhode Island music, but encompassing Irish music and sea shanties, and in this case, they have a great treasure trove of ancient and off the beaten path Yuletide and Christmas and solstice songs. And we'll also be joined by a local musician who lives here or lives in Pawcatuck, AJ Wright, who ran the shanty program, the sea music program at Mystic Seaport for some years, and the festival that was there for. She was the last director of that before they canceled it, and it moved up to Essex, Connecticut. But AJ will be there, and they're just a huge encyclopedia of traditional styles, pretty impressive. So between the four of us, we'll give you some seasonal music you may never have heard before, but that is pretty cool. I might play some of it later.
All right. So I'm going to try a little experiment here. So what I want to try to do is that Craig is the ringleader of the sessions that we do every week. And what I want to do is I'm going to call AJ, the banjo player there.
All right.
What I want to see is if we can take phone calls and it translates to the thing. I think it should.
Look at that. Well, the phone works. That's good.
Yeah. If he answers, if he doesn't answer, so much for the experiment. There he is. Mr. AJ.
Yes, sir.
You're on the air.
Oh, my goodness.
Your goodness. Well, this is the experiment.
Doug, hold him up to the mic.
All right, hold him up. So we're something like that.
Can't get the phone any closer unless I insert it in my mouth.
All right, no. It's like all right. So it's coming in good.
It's okay.
So it's coming in good.
All right, good.
Craig's here. So
hey, AJ.
How do, Mr. Craig?
Good, man. Good.
So Craig I went to the session Wednesday, and
Yes.
AJ couldn't make it, but he's a regular there on the banjo, and Craig's the ringleader, and we had quite the session on Wednesday. I was quite pleased. It's been very busy the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
That's what Craig said. It's been packed house.
Packed house.
They like us.
Yeah. So Craig, talk a little bit about the session.
So over 20 years ago, there's some lost memory about exactly when we started this thing. A group of musicians in the New London to Westerly vicinity started descending on the Captain Daniel Packer Inn on Monday nights, and we'd start up about 10 o'clock or so once, which is when they start their music there. And we'd play until 1:30 in the morning. Old time music. So the Southern string band music played on fiddles and banjo, guitar, mandolin, bass. We have a concertina player that joins us who's very good, although that's not a regular instrument in that style. And we started doing it every week. And we were at Captain Daniel Packer Inn for, I don't know, a dozen years or so. And then we moved over to John's Mystic River Tavern, the storied and legendary Irish bar just near the Mystic Drawbridge. That after a few years we were there, that closed down. Then we moved over to the Social on Bank Street in New London, and we were there until the pandemic hit, and took a hiatus for a couple of years, and then started back up at new place that opened in Groton, the Barn. That was a lot of fun for a while, and then our current home, we got lured away by Brian Brother, who runs the Bayou Barbecue and Grill on Shaw Street in New London. And Brian is an extraordinary cook. I can't say too many good things about all the different cuisines that he's mastered. Most of them sort of Southeastern, barbecue or Cajun food, Mexican food, Tex-Mex, on and on. And he's got this great little restaurant that we convene at on Wednesday evenings now. It started about 6:30, play till about 8:30 or so. And no microphones or anything. There's usually, 5 to 8 of us wailing away in the corner near the front, and it's loud enough you can hear it well, but you don't have to pay attention to it, and you can talk over it.
Yep.
And without anybody feeling like they have to shout. So it works real well, and it's where it's sort of the home territory of that kind of music, where it's social music.
Yeah. And if anybody's out, if you're play guitar or fiddle or bass, if you want to come by, it's a session. Anybody's welcome. Anybody come on by, and we'll pull up a chair and sit there. I credit.
Let me just say one thing though, since Doug issued that invitation. It doesn't mean it's a round robin that everybody gets to play any kind of song you want. This is an old time music session, so we're playing old time fiddle tunes and occasional songs in that style. But so we don't, we're not doing John Denver songs or anything like that. But if you're interested in checking that out, we'd love to see you.
So if you're a guitar guy, your job is we serve the fiddle. So you sit there and we serve the fiddle. So we sit there and we just play backup chords. That's what we play. But I credit the session for getting my rhythm down rock solid. Because I would go. I've been playing like there for 20 years, and just banging the chords out for 3-hour stretches, and it's fun. Oh, you got your banjo going?
AJ's scratching away on the banjo on the phone there.
The phone.
Background, way in the background.
All right.
I'll tell you what, Doug. Let me bang out a fiddle tune.
Okay,
here.
I'm gonna hang up now, Mr. AJ. But thanks for the experiment, and it worked. Thanks.
It works. Okay.
All right.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
AJ.
All right, bang out a fiddle tune.
All right. This will give you an idea of some of the kind of things we do at this session. This is a tune from North Carolina called Snowbird.
Yeah, so that's what we do. That's what we do. What else did I do last week? I went to the tap room and saw Robert. His last name begins with G. It's very complicated. I'm not even going to try to say it, but he works over at Fretz. He's going to be on the show next week. So looking forward to that. Other things that are coming up. Who did I run into? Oh, I ran into somebody. And they told me that, Jim Carpenter. They have to over at the tap room. So on the social this Friday, Jim and Sarah of the Carlines are going to do an opener for Twisted Pine. Now that is going to be a show. That is a show and a half. Twisted Pine, I saw at the Hygienic. One of the best concerts I've ever seen. And get this, it's a mandolin, a flute, and a stand-up bass. No guitar. And they just
And a fiddle.
In the fiddle. The fiddle, yeah. Yep, the fiddle, the flute, yep, there's 4 of them. Yep. And they're just spectacular. They are just spectacular. And you would think, sometimes like flutes, it's like, flutes, yeah, I know, can't you see, the Marshall Tucker band. This is a whole new level of flute playing, I'll tell you. So.
Reminder, Doug, your daughter plays the flute.
I know, but it's the flute, though. It's the flute, All right, babe. So tell us about your little banjo, even though it doesn't look.
So, what Doug is marveling at is this gourd banjo that Danny Lewis Davis just made for me. So it's a hard shelled gourd. The gourd itself is 1/3 of an inch thick, dried out. So it looks kind of pumpkin like. Doesn't have the bumps on it. Smooth, but the top has been cut off so that you've got a round disc, and over that has been stretched wet rawhide that's glued and tacked down to the gourd, and as that dries, it stretches tight. So you get this gourd drum. He's got a hole cut in the side so that it's pointing right towards my ear or up towards my head. And then there's a neck put through it. And it's strung up. It's got an ebony fingerboard.
With no frets.
No frets. This is the earliest form of the banjo. All right. This does not look unlike one of the earliest still existing banjos, which is from the late 17th century in Jamaica. 4-stringed instrument. But it has this little short string that only comes part way up the neck. There's that extra peg, kind of 1/3 of the way up the neck. And that short string sort of serves as like a snare drum does in a drum kit. It's going to keep that backbeat all the time. So it's tuned lower than modern banjos, and the strings are originally gut. These are nylon. It's hard to get gut strings. They did for banjos these days for some reason. So that's a little bit what that sounds like. And just by way of contrast, here's a more modern 5-string. also in need of tuning. Metal strings tuned tighter, much higher pitch.
So, Mr. Craig, let's talk about your COVID projects.
My COVID project.
You did the Shanty CD, right?
I did a shanty CD. That is true. I worked at Mystic Seaport for, like over 35 years as a staff musician. So my job, when I first got that job, and tried to explain to people what it was like, Mystic Seaport has these historic ships, and the prize of the collection is the Charles W. Morgan, the whale ship that was built in 1841, floating there by the dock, and it's got all its masts up, and they put, in the warmer seasons, they put sails on it, and they show. So part of my job was being part of the crew that would set and furl those sails, which meant climbing up in the rigging and hauling yards. And my role in that as a staff musician was to sing the shanties, the work songs that sailors sang when they were doing that kind of work. So I've sung more shanties on board that ship than anybody who ever worked on her when she was a whale ship. I worked on her for 35 years doing it, 9, 10, 8, 9 months out of the year, several days a week. In some years, I tapered off after a while, but I did that, and they also ran I mentioned it earlier, a sea music festival that brought performers from all over the world, and we brought some interesting people there. Of course, there were people from the British Isles, because people associate shanties with the British Isles, although they originate with West Indian and African American singers. So we also brought African American fishermen who had fished for the schooling fish, the menhaden. They're kind of like a big herring, and they're mainly caught for their oil. They're really oily, and that fishery thrived off the coasts of the Carolinas, where most of the fishermen were African American. They'd set these big nets around the fish, and then you had to harden the nets up. They had 2 boats, one on each side, big long rowboats, about 30 feet long each, with half a dozen or 8 men in each boat. And once the fish was surrounded by the net and the bottom pulled tight, it's kind of a drawstring at the bottom. You drop a big weight out, and it goes down and pulls that shut. And then there's this wall of net around the fish. And on one side of the boat, the men would all lean over and reach down into the mesh and pull it up to take the slack out of it, because the fish can dart in that big school if there's too much space in the net, and they can actually break through it. So you have to harden that net up, is the term. They'd lean over the side, reach down, and pull all together. They had work songs that they'd use for that. We brought whalemen who still did the old style whaling from whaleboats with harpoons down in the West Indies on the islands that Pirates of the Caribbean were filmed in, St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Yeah, so if you've seen Pirates of the Caribbean, you've seen the locale where these West Indian people would row out to hunt whales, pilot whales mostly. And they were doing this under oars right up into the early 1980s, and had rowing songs they'd sing. So we incorporated a lot more than what people think of when they think of sea shanties, with the, blow the man down and drunken sailor, things like that. But we brought people from all over the world and did shanties at that festival, and other kinds of sailor music. So I developed some expertise in that, as you can tell, because I'm going on and on about it.
Yeah. And the Shanty CD, the outside the, what do they call it, the CD cover or the case or whatever, was very well done, very detailed, all sorts of information on it.
Yeah, David Lynch, a great graphic artist who lives in North Carolina, did that CD cover using a Winslow Homer painting of a fisherman pulling his little rowboat towards a distant schooner way out on the North Atlantic. There's a great song from that CD I could do.
Yeah.
Give you an idea of what. Come on. And I recorded this on a similar banjo to this. It was a copy of a banjo made by James Boucher back in the 1850s. He had one of the first manufactured banjos. So a little different than this one, but it sounds very similar. And there's a couple things that'll help you understand what goes on in this song. This is fishing in the North Atlantic in winter. Going out in sailboats, about 100-foot long sailboats rigged as schooners, so 2 masts with sails that run the length of the vessel. You can point them pretty close to the wind, sail around in circles. Very handy vessels. And you'd have maybe 18, 20 men on board, and maybe 8 dories, big rowboats, sort of wedge-shaped if you look at them from the end. So they're pretty tippy until you get weight in them, but you're going to put a lot of weight in them because you're going out. You can take the seats out and stack them up like Dixie cups, and then each pair of fishermen that's going to use one of those boats will hook lines into it that run up the mast, so you can haul up on those lines, lift the boat out. You put the seats in. You put your 2 big half barrels of fishing line that's going to run along the bottom with a short line coming off every 20 feet and an anchor at each end. Those fishing lines might be half a mile long or more from each boat. So you have two of these half barrels of trawl line that go into the boat. The fishermen get in, it gets lowered down to the water, and they unhook, and the schooners keep sailing along. They might go half a mile before they drop off the next dory. So they might be 4 or 5 miles away from that first dory in the middle of the open ocean by the time they've dropped all of them off, and they'll set those lines perpendicular to the path that the schooner's sailing on. So there's a buoy at each end that you can, so you can find it again, going down to an anchor that holds that line down on the bottom. They're fishing way out on the ocean where the ocean bottom comes up nearer the surface. Places called fishing banks. You've probably heard of them, the Grand Banks or George's Banks, right? Stellwagen Bank, where you go to look at whales on whale watches. That's what that word means, those banks.
I think I'll pass on this job. Doesn't sound
Oh,
like
man.
much fun.
And in the wintertime,
In the winter, in North
in the
Atlantic,
wintertime,
on a boat and then- no.
out in an open boat, and you're wearing your sou'wester hat, right? That sort of tarred canvas hat folds down over the back of your neck. That's your sou'wester, right? And you're in your dory, is the name
No
of the
thanks.
fishing boat. And there's 2 men in the boat that depend on each other for their lives. They're dory mates, and it's usually only 2 of them. And the most profitable fish you're catching in these days, this is 1870s when this incident happened. This is a true story. The most profitable fish is halibut. So they're on halibut. They're out there in the winter. They're fishing, and they've made a set the night before. They're going to haul it in the morning. One more word you need to understand what happens in the song. If you're in a small boat in a high wind, you want to have either your bow pointing towards it or be rowing away from it. You get sideways to the wind, it's going to knock you over, and the boat's going to swamp. So in a big storm, these small fishing boats would hang what they called a drogue off the bow. It's just a float that'll catch the water, and that makes the boat swing around so the wind is pointing towards it, towards the bow, and you're pointing right into the wind. That's what the drogue is. jolly fisherman does a fishing go. Beware of the cold nor'westers and the stormy winds that blow. It was in the winter season, on the western banks we lay, on board of the old Veronia. Oh, I'll never forget that day. It was stormy in the morning, just at the dawn of light, when we set out to haul our trawls. We returned again all right, bait up again, my jolly boys. Heard our captain say, it's halibut, here it's to be had. We must haul again today. All three can go in a dory, says he, if the worst do come to blow. I'll pay out buoy line astern, adrift you never can go. Three of us went in a dory and away us boys didn't go. The wind southeast breezing up and every sign of snow. Oh, we got our trawls all right and might have reached her too, but when we got our boat in sight, our oars did break in two. We overboard the anchor, thinking to ride it out, but our buoy line soon parted, for I tell you it was not stout. My dory mate, he kept her straight, the other one kept her free, for if we'd have got a broadside to it, capsized we would be. My dory mate, he kept her straight, the other one kept her free, while I rigged a drogue from a halibut and cast it in the sea. It was early the next morning, we took our turn about, pulling away to leeward, keeping a sharp lookout. Sail ho, my jolly boys, the joyful bells do ring. There lay the old Veronia, oh, and to Williamstown we went. Wasn't you afraid? Oh, I guess so. We're all right at the last. By bailing with our sou'westers, we saved our little craft. Love that last line. You know, can you imagine you being out on the North Atlantic in January in a boat that's getting water in it, and the only way you're going to keep afloat is by bailing with your hat?
Yeah, it was like, oof. So you're also kind of a cowboy. You're also writing a book, aren't you?
I am writing a book. Yeah, I got an email from a colleague of my wife's, who's a professor of English in the Maritime Studies program at University of Connecticut. And someone had written this colleague looking for someone to write a book on the history of sea shanties. And I looked at what they were asking for and took it and showed my wife. She said, that's just the book you would write if you just decided to do that on your own. So they were curious about all the kinds of things I've been curious about and looking into for about 40 years. And so I'm in the middle of writing a book on the history of sailor shanties. And some of the things that, in fact, the title of it will give you an idea of what's going on with it. It's called The Secret History of Sailor Shanties. Because there are many popular ideas about what a sea shanty is and who sang them and how they sang them and why they sang them and when they sang them, most of which is pretty wrong. And so getting a chance to put together for a popular audience a book that'll dispel some of those misapprehensions and false ideas is kind of fun. For instance, you might think that if you're going to pick an accent to sing a shanty in, a British or Irish accent is going to be the most authentic. But the likelihood is that when people were actually singing these songs, which is really only starts up about the 1830s as the shipboard work songs that came to be called shanties, the people who were singing them were, if they were Irish or English, they were probably far more likely to imitate what they thought an African American singer would sound like than the other way around. Because the whole form of shanties comes from African American work songs, and a lot of it from the cotton trades, where a newly invented machine in the 1820s and 30s was being used to pack cotton, which was itself by far America's biggest export, mostly coming out of Mobile and New Orleans. So these cotton jack screws, this newly invented machine, which were at that point being operated by enslaved African Americans in Mobile, Alabama, or New Orleans mostly, were packing 3 bales of cotton into the space only 2 would fit into if they were freestanding. So it's a way of using a screw mechanism turned by 4 handles, with 4 men turning them, and the fifth man in the crew just making sure everything's working right, and also setting the pace for it by singing out a verse line that the men who were turning the handles would respond to with a chorus line. So things like hooray, hooray, ho, round the corn, Sally. Hooray for all the lovely ladies round the corn, Sally. Love's a thing that's bound to grab you round the corn, Sally. Holds you tight when once she have you round the corn, Sally. Old and ugly, young and pretty round the corn, Sally. You need not try when once love gets you round the corn, Sally. That's one of the earliest African American work songs we have a written record of, with both melody and words. It's not a cotton stowing song, but it's from that same period when these songs were coming about. In fact, sailors took that song, and a lot of sailors, another thing to be aware of is a lot of sailors in American ships especially were American ships had very diverse crews in this period. And about 1 in 4 or 5 of American sailors were either black or Native American. And that's something that's kind of been erased from popular memory. You don't think of sailors from the Napoleonic era as diverse, but the crews were, and even on British ships, there was a lot of diversity because the British Empire had been going on for so long. But that's the source of the form of shanties. They weren't really sung much before that, because stretching from that period in the 18 teens when Napoleon is defeated, and that's the end of a period of warfare at sea that stretches back to the time of Columbus, back to around 1500. And once those European maritime powers start establishing empires, they're fighting each other over immense amounts of wealth. You know, those East India companies that you might, you heard about those in Pirates of the Caribbean too, right? They're cast as the villain. Well, they were the first giant world corporations. The most valuable company in the history of the world is not Amazon or Microsoft or Aramco, the big current Arabian oil company. No, it's the Dutch East India Company, which only existed for 40 years in the early 1600s, but was worth, I think, 8.7 trillion of today's dollars. And that's because it was transporting things on ships. That's why there's so much piracy. That's why there's Pirates of the Caribbean. It's also why all ships, all big ocean-going merchant ships, bristled with cannon and were operated on a military model. You don't sing while you're working in the middle of a battle. You're listening for orders. And you don't develop habits in your work that are going to be different than what you need to do in a battle on a vessel that's organized on military lines, as were all those big East India companies, whether it's the British or the Dutch or what have you, and all the navies. And so that was the format. And any music that was used to coordinate work was instrumental music. Fifers, trumpeters, those things were very common. Fiddlers as well, especially on smaller vessels. But the crews of those vessels were also huge, so the work was done with work techniques that involved a lot of men grabbing a rope and marching down the deck. After that period of warfare, violence ceased to be the controlling factor, and it became speed that was the controlling factor. Now you're competing to carry things, cargo and passengers, from one place to another faster than your competitors. So you want a crew that's big enough to take in enough sails that if a big storm, a squall comes up, all of a sudden the wind really increases, you got to be able to take in enough sails that the rig doesn't get damaged. But you're not going to pay anybody more than that. You're not going to pay any larger crew than that. But you're also going to be adding sails, making ships longer, the hull design changes. And all those things mean work techniques on board change. These smaller crews can't march away with the line. They got to face the pulley on deck that changes the direction of the line before it goes up into the rig and through the whole pulley system. And they're going to reach out for it, bent over their front knee in a long row, all standing on the same side of the rope, and then snap it back using their legs as well as their arms. Then hand over hand quick, reaching out again and snapping it back. That is one work technique that is a little different. That when you've got enough hands, even if you're pulling like that, you're just going to go hand over hand. Everybody pulls until the slack comes out, and then you kind of do short tugs. But it's coordinated again by instrumental music. This new technique demanded new kinds of songs. So that earlier song I sang, "Round the Corn Sally," refresh your memory of it. Hooray, hooray, oh, round the corn, Sally. Hooray for all the lovely ladies round the corn, Sally. Gets transformed on board ship into "Round the corner we will go, round the corner, Sally, around Cape Horn in the frost and snow, round the corner, Sally." And because the work rhythm is a little different doing what they're doing than what the rhythm of the work that "Round the Corn, Sally" was being used for, they changed the emphasis. Instead of "Round the corn, Sally," where you got an around and lee, which is really a weak syllable, now it gets transformed into "Round the corner, Sally," to fit with the exact motions they're making. Round, and then your hands go hand over hand up the road. So "Round the corner, Sally," that quick hand over hand, and then the second pull. The yard jumps twice, and then you get a brief break while the next verse line comes out. So as that practice took hold, it swept the crews of ships, first in the cotton trade and the packet trades back and forth across the North Atlantic, and then the big money trades in the mid-19th century, the clipper trades, these giant long ships with huge rigs that boasted about how fast they went, which meant if a sail got taken in because the wind was too strong, as soon as the wind dropped down again, the captain wanted that sail up again. So a lot of sail handling, and a lot more compared to earlier eras where you're just trying to get there at a steady pace. That need for speed really brings the shanties into full play. And as sailors develop this habit of singing at work, they start using it for all their jobs. So if you're pumping out the ship or you're marching around the capstan, even if you're just doing a few short tugs on a rope, there's a song for it. And that goes on until technological changes and competition from steamboats, not only because steamboats were faster, they weren't until the late 19th century, but because they could go through the Suez Canal in 1868 and have a much shorter route between Europe and Asia, and then the Panama Canal towards the end of the 19th century. And then steamboats started getting faster, and all of a sudden big ships weren't getting paid to be fast. They were being paid because they were cheap. And the crewing model changed. Now, all of a sudden, you could get sailors really cheap. In fact, they might even pay to come on board because they wanted to get sea time so they could get their papers to work on a steamboat and get some real money. So you start going back to bigger crews, smaller sails, smaller sails, more of them with some other innovations in rig. And by around 1900, sailors are hardly ever singing shanties on big ships.
Yeah.
So it only goes on for about 50, 60 years, where it really is the go-to thing to do. It's not the ancient practice that folklorists at first assumed it was, because sailors do this, they must have always done this. So that's the and then I look at the way shanties are going being used and sung today, and their function as social music. The TikTok phenomenon, where you had that song, the Wellerman, that there was a big
I was unaware of that one.
fad about. Oh yeah, the Scottish Postman sang a New Zealand whaling song that swept TikTok.
Huh.
It was unbelievable how much publicity that got. Because on TikTok, you can layer your own harmonies over the original. And so people added music to it and posted their own versions of it.
Oh, no.
That's what made it so popular. It wasn't just that there was one recording a lot of people watched. Everybody could jump in on it. And of course, it's a group music that is rhythmic and propulsive. So it's a way that it's a fun social music for people to join in. The choruses are usually pretty short and simple. You don't have to learn all the verses. You just learn the chorus, and you can learn it on the fly. So it's great music for singing in groups for fun.
Yeah. Speaking of groups, the Mystic Seaport, the Shanty Festival, the German club.
Yeah.
I went to there once. That was something.
Yeah, that was an after hours open sing where anybody could start a song, and there were performers from the festival, great singers from all over the world. A lot of fans who come are also people who love to sing, and many of them very good singers. So if you started up a song, you might have 300 voices joining in on your chorus, and not just kind of mumbling along, but belting it out, and the roof starts to rise.
No, it was
and that festival is now being held up. It's the same weekend. It's the second weekend of June, and it's up in Essex, and is a great event. Second weekend in June, the Connecticut Sea Music Festival. You can find it by Googling Connecticut Sea Music Festival online. And if any of this sounds interesting to you, is something you might want to do, come on out for that. And I also want to at some point talk about the next Roots Music Stomp, because that's got some component of that.
As a little interlude here, quick, I just want to make sure that everybody knows that Craig is also a music teacher, and he gives lessons.
Through the United, you can sign up for lessons with me on fiddle, banjo, guitar, mandolin, button accordion, or ukulele. I play all those instruments, and
he's got the patience of Job.
But I can help you use songs that you're interested in learning to not only learn to play the song, but to understand how the instrument works and how a little bit of music theory applies and helps you understand more and stretch out.
Yeah, no. So the way I used to, when I tell people about Craig's technique, is I said there's two different types of music teachers out there. One is you go to a music teacher, and this is more piano-ish, but it can be in anything. And they say, okay, here's book number 1, and we're going to learn scales. And then you learn scales, then here's book number 2. We're going to do the thing. Craig goes, so what do you want to learn? Hey, I want to learn how to play Can't You See by Marshall Tucker. Okay, here we go. So let's learn that. And as you're learning it, it's like, okay, by the way, it uses such and such chord, and there you go.
That's something you can do on 2 strings. There's that first chord of Can't You See?
Yep.
And those are 2 finger shapes that move up and down the strings. So
Yep.
taking a basic song like that and giving you easy little formulas for ways you can embellish it.
All right, and Craig will be playing at the Stand Up for Animals, which is on the 17th,
Yes.
and so he'll be playing there. We're gonna. I'm trying to get John Speziale to come by. In a couple
Oh
weeks.
yeah, John's a great interview.
Yep. So
I'll also be playing at December 1st and 10th as part of the Festival of Lights at Mystic Aquarium, which is
oh, no kidding.
in addition to what's going on at Old Mystic Village with their Christmas Festival of Lights. I'll be there on the 1st and 10th doing something similar to what I'll do over at Stand Up for Animals, it being the Christmas Fiddler.
Ah.
And if you go to the Lantern Light Village celebration at Mystic Seaport, which is a immersive on-site play, I'll be playing music in the hold of the, or not the hold, but the below decks on the Charles W. Morgan. So if you come to that really pretty cool event, come by, and I'll be doing some great maritime holiday season and winter season songs.
All right, I think that's pretty much everything. That was a lot of stuff, I'll tell you. So why don't you give us one song to take us out, and then
All right.
do you want to just do the song, Ben, and just fade out on the song? I'll take.
Sure.
All right. So thanks. So Craig's going to play one last song. We're just going to fade him out at the end. And thanks for everybody to come by. And if you see me around town, say hello.
This is a song I'll be doing at the December 20th, Wednesday, December 20th, Roots Music Stomp at the United Theater, where we'll be doing these obscure Christmas songs. This is a song that comes from this sort of Halloweeny kind of tradition in Britain, the day after Christmas on December 26th, which is Boxing Day and also St. Stephen's Day. Come, mad boys, be glad, boys, for Christmas is here, and we will be feasted with jolly good cheer. Let us be merry 'tis St. Stephen's Day. Come and eat and drink freely, here's nothing to pay.